He is supposed to be the Crown's star witness, but once again today, Nigel Wright did much to help the defence and very little to help his former boss, Stephen Harper. Wright basically had no answer when he was accused by Duffy's lawyer of foisting upon the public a cover story approved by Harper that was essentially a pack of lies.
I'm going to do my talking in court today.
Donald Bain is Duffy's lawyer, and he's had 2 years to get ready for this and had no trouble getting Nigel Wright to agree that Mike Duffy had a decent case, that his expenses were technically legal, even if they were improper. Wright said he asked the Prime Minister to approve a plan to end the scandal, saying, "I told the PM that Duffy had decent technical and legal defenses, and that we're basically forcing somebody to repay money that they probably didn't owe."
We are going to voluntarily pay back my living expenses.
Duffy at the time sang from a song sheet written by the PMO, saying he would repay all his housing claims. But of course, he did not. Nigel Wright did. And all the key people in the Prime Minister's office knew the cover story was not true. Asked today why he approved it, Harper stuck to his standard line.
Why were you good to go on public deception?
Well, quite the contrary. As I've said, when this came to my attention, my concern in this entire matter was that Mr. Duffy was making use of taxpayers' dollars in a way that could not be justified.
In fact, Harper was told by Nigel Wright that Duffy's expenses might indeed be justified, but because they'd look bad, Wright said the government was going to be happy if people thought that Duffy had repaid. Bain challenged him, but he hadn't repaid. You had paid. The object was to inflict on Duffy and the Canadian public a deceptive scenario. The government would be happy if people were deceived into thinking Duffy had repaid. Your Tory voter base that's worried about probity, they weren't going to like this. This was political damage control. This wasn't doing a good deed. Wright replied, "I was happy if people thought he repaid. I didn't think it was meaningfully different that I contributed." All of which provided more ammunition for the opposition.
This was about a cover-up, and this was about lying to the Canadian people, and the best the Prime Minister can do to us right now is say, hey, they gave me false lines and I went out and dutifully repeated them. That's not leadership, Stephen Harper.
Canadians should be able to trust that their Prime Minister and his office tell the truth. It's become clear that instead they engaged in an elaborate cover-up. Canadians deserve better.
The politics of all this may not help to prove Mike Duffy's guilt or innocence, but legal experts say politics is not irrelevant.
The issue is criminal intent for the Crown to prove it. And the defense is wanting to show that there was no criminal intent, it was all politics, right? So in that sense, the judge has got to hear to what extent it might be all politics.
Other plans...
And the politics continues, with the heat now turning on the Prime Minister's current Chief of Staff, Ray Novak, who was copied on this email by Nigel Wright saying he is sending a check for Duffy's expenses.
I've known Ray for 20 years. It's unfathomable that Ray would be aware of a payment from Nigel to Mr. Duffy and not tell the Prime Minister.
But this is not nearly over. Don Bain is only just getting started with Nigel Wright, and he still has a bunch more PMO witnesses to chew on in the days ahead, which is not good news for a campaigning Prime Minister, Peter.
All right, Terry, you mentioned there's still a fraud trial going on here. Did Bain make any headway on that as opposed to the headway he was making on the politics?
Well, he did. Duffy is accused, among other things, of making bogus claims for a trip to Vancouver, allegedly for pre-budget consultations. And yes, today Nigel Wright testified that he didn't think Duffy had anything to do with those consultations. But today, Don Bain produced A, Duffy's report on those talks, and B, Nigel Wright's own reply thanking Duffy for his input. Peter.
All right, Terry, thanks very much. Terry Milewski in Ottawa.